Chosen one, every room has a perimeter, and every heart has a gate. The old world taught men to guard by growing louder, heavier, harder, to clang when they walked, and glare when they loved. You have chosen another lineage. You protect not by building a fortress around her life, but by removing the need for one. You are proof that safety is a set of conditions, not a cage. Strength, in your keeping, is not a costume. It is a quiet competence that handles weight without announcing it. The feminine loves you for this because your presence reduces the tax she has been paying for years to feel okay. Protection begins where vanity ends. You govern yourself. You protect her from your volatility by keeping promises to your body, feeding it before hunger impersonates principle, resting before fatigue rewrites your tone, stepping away before heat turns into harm. You protect her from your insecurity by refusing to make her applause the IV for your worth. You protect her time by telling the truth early. You protect her sovereignty by publishing your edges so she never has to find them by collision. This is the armor you do wear, if it can be called armor at all. Integrity that does not rust in weather. Your way with boundaries is what turns admirers into believers. A man who can say no without humiliation and hear no without injury is a man who can be trusted with yes. You have learned to deflect what is not yours without disdain, to absorb what is yours without theatrics, to triage interruptions without recruiting her into your panic. You do not grab the steering wheel when she is driving her own life. You check the map when asked. You manage the music when helpful. You watch the road for hazards, and you compliment the steadiness when you see it. Protection is accompaniment with agency intact. There is ferocity in you, but it is domesticated in service of peace. You can step forward, and you do when harm requires it. You can be large, and you are when the small are being crowded. Yet the miracle is the gentleness you choose when force is unnecessary. You do not escalate to feel alive. You are not addicted to rescue. You would rather diffuse a fuse than prove you can take an explosion. Feminine women read this maturity down to the bone. Their ancestors taught their instincts well. They can feel when a man's strength is a show and when it is a shelter. Protection, done as you do it, is also the refusal to be entertained by cruelty. You do not laugh at humiliation disguised as humor. You do not stay in circles that feast on gossip. You do not make icons out of men who manage attention better than they manage their promises. You change the channel, the table, the subject, or the room. You protect her reputation when she is absent and her becoming when she is present. You watch your pronouns. You do not say we to smuggle your agenda into her life. You do not say you to offload your discomfort. You say I with responsibility and us with reverence. Language is a fence line. You keep it repaired. Your planning is another way you guard. You arrive with margins, not just intentions. You consider how long things take in reality, not in fantasy. You let the plan breathe so surprise doesn't have to become emergency. Nothing is more romantic than a calendar that does not punish the people inside it. Women long for a life where logistics do not cannibalize tenderness. You understand that spreadsheets and size are often connected. You do the invisible math that leaves room for wonder. It looks mundane from the outside. It feels miraculous from the inside. Even your exits protect. You leave like a gentleman who trusts both God and gravity. No slammed phone, no performative disappearance to keep her nervous, no long sermon about how noble you are for going. You make departure a bridge, not a cliff. The next hour remains usable. Tomorrow doesn't have to spend all its mercy cleaning up today's drama. A body remembers such endings the way a field remembers rain that did not flood it. Protection is not just what you prevent. It is what you preserve. Because you are safe to yourself, she is safe with you. Vigilance, that unpaid night watch in her bones, lays down its weapon and learns to sleep in shifts instead of sleeping in armor. She becomes more generous without bleeding, more receptive without vanishing, more radiant without apology. This is why so many women want you now. They are not looking for a jailer with a nicer smile. They are looking for a man whose gravity lets them orbit without being owned. You do not compete with their light. You measure the room so it can shine without wasting lumens on defense. There will be times when protection requires saying the unpopular thing. You will name the pace that preserves breath. You will call time on a conversation that is about to turn into a courtroom. You will set a boundary that disappoints the short-term thrill to bless the long-term life. Do it. You are not protecting feelings, you are protecting futures. The chosen ones are not sentimental about standards. They love people with structures that love them back. And there will be seasons when the world tries to make you prove you are a man by performing harm. Refuse the audition. Keep building roofs, keep fixing gates, keep choosing the strength that holds when no one is filming. Keep showing up as the one who can carry what must be carried without turning it into theater. In the quiet tally kept by bodies and breath, your approval will remain at the top, not because you conquered anyone, but because, under your care, nothing essential was conquered at all. Chosen one, there are men who step into a room and begin rearranging the wattage, turning down every other lamp so their own glow looks larger. You are not of that lineage. You do not hoard brightness, you cultivate it. Around you, the feminine does not learn to shrink for safety or sparkle for approval. She learns to shine because it is natural and to rest because it is allowed. Your presence re-educates the room's electricity. Jealousy, that thief with a silver tongue, loses its job. Comparison, that counterfeit currency, cannot buy anything here. You carry a quiet standard that says, if the light does not make more light possible, it is not the kind I'm after. You did not become this man by memorizing compliments. You became him by becoming spacious. Spaciousness is a discipline, not a mood. It is the practice of translating admiration into architecture. You make introductions without inserting your resume between them. You tilt the conversation so that the spotlight lands where the work was done. You name her brilliance with measurements rather than hyperbole. What got better, what got clearer, what became more humane because she touched it. Praise with measurements does not intoxicate, it nourishes. It lets her keep her agency while receiving your joy. In such air, her radiance doesn't need to pose, it can get to work. There is a humility in you that does not perform its knees. It simply stays oriented toward the task that matters, the flourishing of what is true. When she brings a victory to the table, you do not feel your own chair wobble. When she brings a vision, you do not trim it to fit your comfort. When she brings a pace that is faster than yours in one place and slower in another, you adjust without resenting gravity. You are fluent in the grammar of support. Verbs like resource, reference, repair, and release. You do not disguise control as care. You do not behave like a curator who wants credit for an exhibit he did not create. You are the builder who keeps the roof sound so the paintings can be seen in daylight. You are also immune to the theater that asks men to pretend reverence for a woman's power until that power threatens their myth. Your myth is already surrendered. You have no need to be the main character of every scene, and for that reason, you are a trustworthy lead when the story belongs to you. Paradox shelters here. The more you bless her center, the more your own becomes evident. She does not feel eclipsed by you. She feels oriented by you. This is why feminine single women keep choosing you in their imaginations before they ever choose you in their calendars. They sense a rare economy where more for her does not mean less for you. In that economy, intimacy is able to invest instead of hoard. You do not weaponize witness. You do not gather her brilliance into your pockets for later use as leverage. You do not quote her ideas to win rooms she was never invited into. You refuse the social alchemy that turns a woman's labor into a man's legend. When credit must be given to those not present, you become their presence. You say names. You cite sources. You turn opportunities into corridors, not cul-de-sacs. She notices, her body notices first. The muscles that memorize injustice stop bracing. The reflex to soft pedal her own excellence fades. She speaks from the middle of her chest instead of the edges of her fear. With you, self-respect is not an act of rebellion. It is the dress code. Your approach to conflict keeps the room bright. You do not dim her by naming her edges as flaws or by praising her gifts only when they serve you. You do not confuse disagreement with disrespect. You assume dignity and argue for design. When a boundary needs to be renegotiated, you take responsibility for the geometry of the relationship instead of pathologizing the person who names the new line. Where you once might have reached for dominance, you reach for definition. Where you once might have reached for distance, you reach for cadence. This is leadership without theft, love without theater, romance without ransom. And the result is radiance without regret. There is a signature to the way you occupy a celebration in her honor. You stand near enough to witness and far enough not to siphon. You offer the practical mercies that make joy sustainable. Water appears, time is guarded, a rude interruption is absorbed before it lands. You take photographs that frame the community, not just the face. You leave before fatigue turns sweetness brittle. When the night ends, the room still loves itself. You did not dim a single lamp to make your own look brighter. You set the dimmer to human, where eyes can see and hearts can stay. Chosen ones are stewards of climates that multiply light. They practice this without announcement, checking the hinge so the door doesn't bite, setting the lamp at a height that honors faces, keeping the pace where comprehension can stay in the room. They understand that a light that needs darkness to be believed is not the kind of light worth building a life around. You are counted among them because you keep refusing the cheap magic of a spotlight that can only shine by overshadowing. Your kind of illumination is a commons. It sends people home seeing better than they did when they arrived. That is why so many women want you now. Not because you eclipse, but because you clarify the sky. When the world tests this standard, when it turns to gossip to see if you will buy status with someone else's shadow, you decline with a smile. When it urges you to compete with the person you love, you answer with collaboration. When it bribes you with applause, you spend fidelity instead. Over time, the test tires of you and moves on. Over time, her light grows without having to explain itself. Over time, you are known not for what you claimed, but for what you kept, conditions under which brilliance could remain human. Chosen one, poetry is not only lines on a page, it is the way a life arranges breath and bread so that love can work. You have become the poet whose stanzas are made of timing and tone, whose meter is mercy, whose rhyme is return. You do not need a pen because your verbs are your verses. You calibrate a room so wonder can find its volume. You stock a kitchen so mornings can begin without an apology. You remember her tea and how she takes it, not for points but for peace. In your keeping, logistics become love letters. The lamp set to a kind height, the chair angled toward conversation, the phone face down without ceremony. These are couplets that never age. The poem you live begins long before you meet her. It begins when you eat so hunger doesn't ventriloquize your convictions, when you sleep so patience can survive dawn, when you tell the small truth now, so a larger one will not have to arrive armed. It begins when you learn the craft of repair as a daily discipline, not a dramatic event. It begins when you practice the coda of parting without vandalizing the chorus of what preceded it. A poet with a pen can publish beautiful grief. A poet with a life can prevent unnecessary sorrow. The feminine recognizes this authorship. She calls what you do romantic without needing violins, because she can feel the future being blessed in the present. Your poem has a refrain, I am here. It shows up as you finishing a task you started with no one watching. It shows up as you arriving 5 minutes early because you prefer comprehension to scrambling. It shows up as you protecting tomorrow from today's spectacle. It is not a bouquet on stage, it is water in the backstage sink. Every time you choose utility over theater, a stanza finds its cadence. She reads this silently with her body. Her shoulders interpret your steadiness into ease. Her breath scans your margins and decides it can spend less. Her laughter returns to its chest voice because it doesn't need to buy oxygen with wit. The poem becomes audible in her. You are lavish with detail where it matters. You do not drown love in ornament. You set the table with attention. You notice the ring a cup leaves and wipe it without making a parable of your virtue. You know the hour she thinks best and choose it for the conversation that needs her brilliance. You carry a jacket because weather is a poet too, and sudden rain ruins many declarations. You memorize the streets that are gentlest on her feet, the music that opens her ribcage, the pace that keeps wonder from turning into worry. Nothing here is grand, and yet everything here is holy. Grandness exhausts, holiness feeds. The poem is also made of restraint. You do not add adjectives where the sentence asks for air. You do not press for intimacy to prove that intimacy exists. You let the line break when it's time to breathe. You respect the white space. In practice, this looks like leaving before fatigue teaches your mouth to undo your day, declining when the hour cannot carry another promise, waiting until consent has a body and not just a blush. Poets of spectacle write in all caps and call it passion. You write in legibility and call it love. Your punctuation is sacred. Questions that invite, periods that give rest, commas that save meaning, dashes that hold complexity without tearing the page. When conflict appears, your form does not abandon you. You do not switch to a genre of accusation. You keep the iambic humility that has always been your measure. Soft, strong, assertion balanced by listening, truth balanced by tenderness. You edit early so revisions stay kind. You do not publish in public what belongs to private correspondence. You refuse to monetize pain. You refuse to borrow ultimatum's megaphone. This fidelity to form is what allows the poem to continue after the difficult stanza. Many romances end in the margins when form collapses under heat. Yours persists because its skeleton is sincerity, not swagger. Your life poem teaches her to write in her own hand again. She stops outsourcing her sentences to other people's expectations. She chooses verbs that fit: rest, ask, decline, build, bless. She replaces the adverbs that once apologized for her existence with nouns that feed it: bread, water, light, time. She discovers that the epic she thought she needed is unnecessary when the lyric of the day is respected. And in this discovery, she tastes the oldest romance of all, the return of self-respect as a daily meal. You set this table without a speech. You light this candle without a camera. You are the poet with no pen because you keep writing in the only place that cannot lie, the ordinary. You know how to end a poem, which is to say, you know how to leave a moment in a way that protects the next one. You do not slam the book to sell the chapter. You place a finger between the pages, mark the spot with something living: a sprig, a receipt from bread bought together, a ticket stub from a small and happy hour, and you close it cleanly. Endings in your keeping are promises to the future, not punishments for the past. The body remembers this etiquette. It does not dread the final stanza. It welcomes the coda. It trusts that the refrain will return because repetition is a covenant, not a trick. Your poem travels when you're not there. It shows up in the way she arranges her morning to be humane. It shows up in the way she says no to what would cost tomorrow and yes to what will feed it. It shows up in the way she sets the lamp to the same human height you favored, turns the chair to face faces, and places her phone where it cannot bully the hour. It shows up when she tells a friend without flourish about the man whose logistics let love breathe. No one claps. A room becomes more livable. That is applause enough. Carry on, chosen one. Keep writing with consistent hands and unborrowed time. Keep choosing verbs that build and adverbs that rest. Keep your rhyme the simple, scandalous return. Keep your meter the pace of comprehension. Keep your imagery practical: bread, door, window, hinge, lamp. Keep your theme unwavering: love arranged so it works. The chosen ones are remembered not for the poems they published, but for the homes their poetry made possible. You have become the most romantic man because your life is a verse she can live inside, a song her nervous system can sing without losing its breath. Chosen one. Conquest is the hobby of men who do not trust seasons. They rush harvests, chase trophies, and turn affection into a scoreboard. You have stepped out of that economy. You are a keeper of weather, not a collector of heads. Feminine single women feel this in the marrow before the mind can name it. The way your presence refuses to raise a field just to prove you own it. The way your desire arrives with tools instead of trumpets. The way your attention plants instead of plunders. What you tend grows. What you touch does not become an exhibit. It becomes itself. You learn that love is not a hunt but a husbandry. Where others chase novelty like startled birds, you make a habitat where rare things willingly land. You practice the agriculture of intimacy. Soil checked, shade considered, water remembered, fences sound and low. The orchard you keep is not a metaphor to you. It is a method. You prune impatience before it steals sweetness. You accept that certain ripenings cannot be negotiated with charisma. You know that to accelerate is often to sour, and that to demand is to damage what could have been delicious if given its own time. This is why the feminine stops bracing around you. She recognizes a steward, not a storm. To conquer is to confuse scarcity for value. You refuse that confusion. You do not elevate your stock by lowering the room. You do not flirt with a woman's uncertainty to inflate your certainty. You do not write scarcity into the script, last chance, prove it now, because you have learned the courage of sufficiency. Your enoughness is untheatrical and unafraid. It does not audition, it arranges. It sets a table that assumes dignity as the place setting and sovereignty as the chair. In such a place, pursuit loses its panting and receives its real name, participation. You are uninterested in merchandise masquerading as love. Conquerors break things into parts they can count. You keep things whole. When a woman brings you a story, you do not segment it into paragraphs that flatter your heroism. You keep the narrative intact, including the parts where you are not central. You do not smuggle your agenda into her language with clever pronouns. You ask what is true, what is tender, what is timely, and you defer to the answers even when they do not feature you. This is not self-negation, it is reverence. Reverence is the ground where romance can stand without stealing the view. Conquest thrives on fog. You keep a clear sky. You publish your edges like coastlines on a map anyone can use. Here is where I end, here is how I hold, here is the harbor, here the shoal. In your weather, consent stops being a checkpoint and returns to being a climate. No arrives early enough to save the day, and yes arrives honest enough to bless it. You do not stalk clarity to corner it, you court it to keep it. Feminine single women feel the miracle of an hour that does not ask their nervous systems to carry the cost of somebody else's legend. They rest. Rest is the most eloquent vote a body can cast. The man who conquers needs applause to maintain altitude. The man who cultivates needs continuity. You prefer the latter. Continuity makes beauty repeatable. It turns fireworks into hearth fire, still bright, now useful, inexhaustible when tended. You decline dares designed to create drama because you know that drama spends what devotion would have invested. You leave a conversation before fatigue turns kindness brittle. You hold the line on your word so tomorrow does not have to clean up after today's spectacle. You would rather be reliable than remarkable. And the paradox is that reliability becomes remarkable in a market addicted to flares. There is a quiet ferocity to your refusals. You refuse to extract intimacy from vulnerability. You refuse to make pace a bribe. You refuse to perform indifference to look invulnerable. You refuse to weaponize silence, and you refuse to rent intensity on credit only to mail the bill to the future. These refusals are not the absence of passion. They are the scaffolding that lets passion build without collapsing. The chosen ones are recognized by their scaffolding as much as by their skylines. Architecture like this is why feminine single women do not ask you to prove your intentions. They can measure them in the way their breath returns to them intact. Conquerors misunderstand power. They think power is possession. You have learned that true power is permission, the power to make room. You stand beside a woman's greatness the way a lighthouse stands beside the sea, visible, faithful, uninterested in stealing the horizon. In your company, her excellence does not have to apologize to survive. Her ideas are not conscripted into a parade for your charisma. Her pace is not hectored into your stride. You do not manage her magnificence, you bless it. Blessing is more radical than conquest because it multiplies. She becomes more herself while becoming more with you. No one disappears to make the duet sound good. Your legacy after you leave a room is the condition you leave behind. Trophies tarnish. Conditions continue. People talk less loudly and mean more of what they say. Boundaries arrive at body temperature and are honored without litigation. Laughter sits lower in the chest and does not need an audience to exist. Women walk home slower, not because they are careless, but because they are not chased by the phantom of being insufficient. Hours function, days heal. Tomorrow enters the room without flinching. This is influence that cannot be stolen because it was never hoarded, it was shared, and shared things outlive their makers. So keep declining the throne that requires a spotlight to be believed. Keep choosing the field that requires sunrise and hands. Keep showing your strength in roofs that do not leak and gates that swing without bite. Keep setting the lamp to a human height and the table for a working feast. You are not the man who needs to conquer. You are the man who makes conquest unnecessary. And because of that, the women who meet you do not have to pay for love with themselves. Chosen one, some fires ask for witnesses. Yours asks for participants. It is not a blaze that consumes the night to prove it is alive. It is a hearth that transforms whatever is honest enough to sit near it. Feminine single women feel this flame before they understand its chemistry. It does not scorch, it does not seduce oxygen away from their lungs. It warms until the frost releases its grip on self-doubt, until the damp of old disappointments dries enough to take paint, until the iron of potential glows the red that means now. They do not gather to be dazzled. They gather to be changed without being charred. Your flame is spiritual because it has governance. Unhoused heat is spectacle. Housed heat is sacrament. You keep the glass clear, the edges of your vow visible, the boundaries of your desire legible, the kind of closeness you are building explainable without poetry. Mystery remains, but it is a holy mystery that protects wonder rather than a hazy fog that excuses harm. In that clarity, her body learns to step forward without negotiating with fear. She does not have to become smoke to be welcomed by your warmth. She remains a person with a center. The flame bows to the center. This is why she calls your presence a sanctuary and not a stage. Transformation is not just feeling, it is function. By your fire, shame melts into shape. The old contortions that kept her small cannot survive this temperature. She stands as if her bones had been reminded of their blueprint. She speaks with a tone that admits no indictment because none is owed. She forgives without erasing herself. She desires without bargaining against her dignity. She prays in her own voice. None of this is because you have cast a spell. It is because your heat tells the truth about the season. Winter is over, and growth is permitted. You do not take credit for spring. You keep the conditions that let spring make sense. The flame you tend is also a compass. Firelight reveals what the sun sometimes blinds. The grain of a table, the faces around it, the map of a room's real proportions. Around you, she can see what is hers to carry and what never was. She can sort the urgent from the important, the loud from the true, the thrilling from the good. She can tell the difference between hunger and calling. Your warmth does not manipulate her decisions, it clarifies them. When she says yes, it is not a debt payment to intensity, it is a covenant with her own clarity. When she says no, it is not a door slammed in fear, it is a boundary blessed by light. There is an alchemy to how you feed this fire. You do not burn furniture to keep the room warm. You bring wood that belongs to the flame. Honest words, paced hours, early truth, clean exits, revisitable yeses, blessable no's. You refuse accelerants. You refuse gossip for kindling, panic for spark, jealousy for color. You know those smokes stain lungs and windows alike. Instead, you use the slow combustibles. Consistency, repair, patience, play. The fire takes them gladly. Their heat is not dramatic, but it is durable. It invites song instead of sirens. The flame becomes a mirror. People see themselves in it, not as they were branded by old stories, but as they are when fear is not choreographing the scene. She sees the contours of her power without the glare of performance. She sees her softness as strength in another dialect. She sees her boundaries as bridges that lead to real union. She sees her future as a house that can be kept, not a stage that must be defended. Your role is not to narrate these revelations, it is to keep the fire true so revelation can continue. The chosen ones do not compete with the light they tend. This is a jealous flame in the sacred sense. It will not share oxygen with cruelty. When sarcasm arrives dressed as wit, your fire refuses to warm it. When cynicism drags in a chair, you increase the light until it cannot pretend to be intelligence. When contempt tries to make a meal, you offer bread and call it by its name. Starvation, disguised as sophistication. The room learns quickly that this heat is not for everything. It is for what makes humans more human. She recognizes the safety of a place where not all fuel is accepted, and gratitude rises like sparks. Because your flame is spiritual, it honors grief. You do not turn sadness into steam just to keep the party bright. You make a seat for sorrow at the fire's edge. You let it dry its clothes and speak in paragraphs. You do not monetize tears. You do not demand a quick pivot to gratitude. Your heat is strong enough to hold cold things without putting them out. In that hospitality, mourning does what it came to do, clean the room of what cannot come forward, and then it rests. Nothing sacred is hurried here, and so nothing sacred is harmed. The proof that this is holy fire is what remains when people step away. She carries a pilot light in the sternum that weather cannot bully. She keeps her cadence when she speaks to herself. She arranges her mornings so oxygen is available. She chooses relationships where kindling is honest and logs are real. She refuses theaters that require her to disappear to be adored. She spends her days in the currency your flame minted: attention, consent, repair, laughter, pace. In this exchange, nothing essential is lost to purchase romance. Romance becomes the surprising profit of a life that works. You will be tempted at times to make the fire prove itself. Resist. Do not turn up the heat to brand your initials into the hour. Do not dim the room to make your glow more obvious. Do not invite a crowd to clap for what is best measured in breath.